Hello, welcome everyone to Tergar International and today's event, Introduction to the Path of Liberation, Discovering the Inner Sky. And your guides today are George Hughes and Kunzang Palmo, and I'm Jenny White, and I'm your host for today. So we have people joining us on Zoom and on YouTube. So over 1,191 people registered on Zoom and 2,329 registered to be here on YouTube. So welcome to everybody. So the chat is open at the moment on Zoom and in YouTube. So please do tell us where you're from. I'm just seeing people from all over Asia and the Americas and Europe calling on Zoom. So lovely to see you and those of you on YouTube. So if you're on Zoom, we have translation and interpretation available. So I want to share a poll question with you all so that we can find out which language you're in. So if Stella, you can launch the language poll. So we try and we offer I can't see it coming up just yet. Here it is. So let us know what language you are listening in on. So we've got options of English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, French, German, and Portuguese. And if you're listening on YouTube, you're listening in the English language. And just while we're waiting for people to answer this poll question on Zoom, just want to say thank you to all our interpreters behind the screen who are helping to make these languages available so that we can reach out to people across the globe for these teachings. So thank you. So we've got 10% of you here in listening in English in Zoom, 68% in Chinese, 6% in Russian, 2% Spanish, 7% in French, 3% in German, 4% in Portuguese. We also have the Japanese option, but there's nobody here using that language at the moment. So thank you. And now another poll. So we just want to know how you're connected to Tergar. So we've just got another one on screen. And again, if you're on YouTube, you can let us know your answer here. So what is your main connection to Tergar? So are you connected via the Joy of Living program, Path of Liberation? I'm new to Tergar, or another way that you're connected. So you can let us know. If you're in YouTube, you can let us know in the chat. So we've got 234 people on Zoom. I can't see the YouTube participants at the moment. Just let that run. So Joy of Living, 49% of you on Zoom are through the Joy of Living path. 26% of you are through the Path of Liberation of Adriana Online path. 18% of you are new to Tergar, so warm welcome to all of you. And 8% other. So this is just Zoom, and I'm sure there's many of you telling us where you're from on YouTube as well. So a warm welcome to everybody. So the next thing is, so this program is going to be 90 minutes long, and we've got George and Kunzang here today. So for some of you might have been expecting Tim Olmsted to be here, so he can't be with us today. So George has very kindly agreed to step in. So George and Kunzang will be given an overview of the Path of Liberation, which was created by Mingyur Rinpoche, and they will guide us through a short meditation. And after the guides have given a talk of the path, there'll be time for some questions. So you can submit your questions by completing a form. So there's a link to the form in the chat right now, and Stella's going to share a QR code shortly on the screen, maybe. Here we go. So if you use the QR code for or the link in the chat in the form, either on YouTube or on Zoom, you can click there, you can ask your question, and then that will be magically translated into English. So you can write that in your own language. And we suggest you keep your questions short, concise, and to the topic. And then I'll be reading them out to George and Kunzang. If you have any technical questions and you're on Zoom, you can use the QA box, which is down in your toolbar. And yes, so just to remind you, practice and teaching questions go into use the form, and any technical questions in the Q&A box if you're on Zoom. So that's it for the tech. I'm going to, before I hand over to Kunzang and George, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about them. So first, Kunzang. So Sungwa Kunzang Palmo is originally from England, and she travelled around the world, being an international art teacher for a decade. And while she was travelling in Nepal, she met Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and she was so inspired by his teachings that she chose to stay in Asia and began immersing her life in the Dharma. So at one point she was in Himachal Pradesh in North India, where she had the great fortune of receiving teachings from Jetsun Tenzin Palmo, and has had guidance and teachings from her through the years. She's completed a 3-year retreat at Sherabling Monastery under the guidance of Mingyur Rinpoche, and she continues to take teachings from Rinpoche. So she's a meditation teacher and a Dharma teacher for the Joy of Living and the Vajrayana Online. She works with Tergar retreats and the Tergar Institute at Osaling Monastery in Kathmandu, Nepal. So she also travels to Antigua and Trinidad. So she works for Bodhicharya, an international organization founded by Ringu Tulku Rinpoche. So she divides her time between all these continents, and right now she's in Portugal. So she's calling in from there, the retreat centre. And next, George Hughes. So George began his journey into meditation and the wisdom traditions as a teenager, and he's become a dedicated practitioner and teacher across several traditions. So his spiritual home, he found that with Mingyur Rinpoche, his root guru, and committed his life to sharing Rinpoche's profound teachings. And George has worked with Mingyur Rinpoche for many years, and he's guided and supported Joy of Living programs and Path of Liberation curriculum worldwide across North America, South America, Africa, Asia. So right now he's calling us from Nepal. And George also serves as the co-executive director of Tergar Institute, and he also works with Rinpoche social engagement initiatives in the Himalayas, running meditation journey treks. So they've got a wide experience between them, and they work closely together throughout all of these activities, and we're delighted to have them with us. And with that, I'm just going to hand over to our dear friends and guides, Kunzang and George. Thank you both.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jenny. What a gorgeous welcome. Hi, George. Wonderful to be with you today.
Always nice to be with you, Konsama. Yeah, thank you.
So
and thank you, Jenny.
Yeah. So I'm super delighted to be here with you all today. Quite impressed with the numbers that we've got. That's really impressive. People from all over the world that are very interested in the path of liberation. So yeah, very happy to be with you here today. And the fact that you're here really does suggest that in some way meditation has already kind of touched your life. Maybe it's brought you greater clarity, maybe a sense of openness, or a sense that there's something more to discover in your experience. And this is really what we're going to be sort of gently exploring that possibility together today. So I'm sure you'll have seen from a lot of the promotional material. I know we have a lot of promotional material that comes out through Tergar International, but if you've been reading those, you'll already understand that the Mahamudra tradition is really the view that we don't need to adopt anything new. We don't need to become something different. Rather, the experience that we're going through here is beginning to recognize what is already here, this natural awareness that underlies all of our experience. And the beauty of this path is what's framed in the path of liberation. So really looking directly to the experience of your own mind. It's a very practical, very step-by-step practice, really integrating the ancient wisdom, the tradition of the ancient wisdom into our modern day lives. So we're really very, very fortunate to be exploring this material today. So wherever you're coming from, if you're just curious, or if you already know that you're drawn to deepen your practice or explore the practice of the path of liberation, we're very happy that you're here with us, and we're looking forward to exploring this together. And George, my good friend George, and I, we often team up together and teach together, and really looking forward to this. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. In a few moments, I'll hand over to George, and George will lead us in a sort of a settling meditation, just a few moments or a few minutes of meditation. And then, as Jenny said, we'll have a bit of an open conversation between the two of us about the path of liberation. As we're doing that, I'd really encourage you to post your questions. So if you have questions as they're coming up in real time, please feel free to type into the Q&A or scan and type in your question. And we do have, so we'll probably talk, as I said, for about 40 minutes. And we can even pause during the session if it feels timely and appropriate, and just sort of hear how it's landing for you. And then after the Q&A session of about 25 minutes, we'll have a few minutes of closing. So yeah, I think we're in for a bit of a treat for the next hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes now, probably. And so with that, I'll hand you over to George. Thank you, George.
Yeah, thank you, Kunsong. I always enjoy working with you, which we have the ability to do so, the opportunity to do so many times. So yeah, looking forward to this conversation. So yeah, it's always a nice way to begin any of these things with a little bit of practice. So let's just do a short, as Kunsong said, a short grounding meditation practice. So take a moment to find a comfortable meditation seat. And most of you know, spine loosely straight, and relax what you're able to do. And if you find some aspect of body or mind doesn't want to relax, just see if you can relax around it. Eyes can be open or closed. Maybe take a moment as we begin just to touch into your motivation. Why are you tuned in today? Why are you watching this on YouTube or Zoom? What do you hope to get out of this? Maybe expanding that wish out to not only benefit yourself, your family, your friends, your community, but to benefit all beings. And then just rest body and mind again. We'll start off simply by bringing attention, your awareness, to the sensation of your body sitting. The weight of your body on the ground or your chair, whatever support you've got, and that natural sense of being supported. See if you can allow your awareness to settle into these sensations, resting gently there. Really feeling grounded, supported, and then maybe a little bit energized. Bring your awareness to your breath. As Rinpoche tells us, there's no need to change anything about the breath. No need to control it. Simply notice it. Whatever your experience of the breath is today. If you feel it at your nostrils, or feel the sensation of your chest rising and falling. Maybe you just have a felt sense, or you visualize the journey of the breath through the whole body, whatever's there. And again, as always, if thoughts arise, you can notice them, but just let them pass. Gently return awareness to your breath. Now I invite you to expand your awareness. So noticing the environment you're in, any sounds, any sensations in the body, any thoughts or emotions you are experiencing. And again, no need to change or block or create anything. Simply allow it to be just as it is. You might notice how experiences arise on their own, exist in awareness, dissolve back into awareness. There's nothing you need to do. Now, if you can, see if you can shift your attention to awareness itself. It's open awareness. So not resting your awareness on anything specific, but simply the knowing of experience. You may find a natural clarity here, a quiet, open presence, or your mind might be racing. Whatever you're experiencing, just rest in that. Whether mind is moving or still, awareness itself remains undisturbed, spacious. And now gently bring your awareness back to the weight of your body, the breath moving in and out of your body. Maybe lengthen your inhale, slow down your exhale. Feels right. You might want to move your fingers, move your toes. Maybe gently open your eyes if they've been closed. And just pause here for a moment. Notice how you feel. Notice this awareness that it's always present. All we need to do is touch in. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, George, for a lovely practice. And so, shall we begin with a bit of conversation?
I like conversation. I enjoy talking to you. We can let people listen. Sure, why not?
So I was thinking, George, like, could you begin us off by explaining how the path of liberation teachings fit into the path? Like giving us some context. Where does the path of liberation fit into the Buddhist path?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one I've heard a lot of times. Yeah. And I like to start off with, Mingyur Rinpoche often talks about the main dish and the side dish. So I know we've got people here from Vajrayana Online, and much of what we offer in Vajrayana Online would be a side dish, Abhidharma, Madhyamaka, whatever, and lots of other courses there. There's so many, I can't even think of one off the top of my head. But the main dish, the main teachings, the main path that Rinpoche has laid out for us is the 8 levels, the 3 levels of joy of living, and then the 5 levels of the path of liberation. So, and it's amazing how much similarity there is between the joy of living and the path of liberation. But really, to focus more on the path of liberation, it's really intended to guide practitioners to recognize, to stabilize recognition of their nature of mind, or Buddha nature. In the joy of living, something very similar would be our innate well-being or basic goodness. And the aim is to recognize the true nature of reality through experiential meditation. So it's based, as Mingyur Rinpoche's lineage is based, on Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions. Rinpoche holds both of these lineages. And focusing the mind from suffering, cultivating awareness, love, compassion, discovering the radiant awareness within daily life is kind of the goal here. And we have a couple different options, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but we've got the Nundro track, which would be a more traditional way to practice the path of liberation. And then Rinpoche also wrote a shorter, more concise liturgy, Nectar of the Path. But in the greater Vajrayana Buddhist world, I suppose, nature of mind teachings really are pointing directly to the mind's empty, luminous nature, which are tied most directly, at least in the experience, to the 3rd turning of the wheel. But Rinpoche oftentimes talks about, in these practices, we're practicing all 3 yanas, all 3 turnings of the wheel, or all 3 traditions, vehicles, on one cushion. So, and without getting into too much detail, that the 1st turning of the wheel, the foundational teachings, really align quite nicely with the joy of living, really calming the mind. Working with the 4 noble truths, impermanence, suffering, non-self. So really loosening, preparing the ground, if you will. Starting to loosen up that sense of a solid self. But not really describing the luminous quality, the awareness quality of mind. Where in the 2nd turning of the wheel, emptiness and bodhicitta are introduced. Bodhicitta would, without getting too far into it, just compassion, the desire for all beings to achieve Buddhahood. We're moving into, so if you're coming from the joy of living, we're definitely moving into Buddhist territory here. So we're going to be using Buddhist terminology and Buddhist iconography. So in the, there are a couple of different schools of the emptiness. In fact, we're studying those at the Tergar Institute right now. A couple of those as we're studying Madhyamaka, but all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So this idea of emptiness of self, emptiness of other, and even mind has no fixed essence. So this starts to clear away the conceptual reification. So that we begin to recognize that even nature of mind isn't something solid. Emptiness is not something we can grab onto, not really a concept that we can really hold on to. And this is where a lot of these teachings come from, this emptiness aspect. But what really, I think, makes them special is the third turning. When we start to talk about Buddha nature, luminous mind, mind is empty and luminous. So we'll talk more about these different qualities shortly. But we move beyond the fact that we have this potential. We are, as you've probably read in Mingyur Rinpoche's book, The Joy of Living, we're perfect just the way we are. And all we need to do is recognize it. So this innate potential for awakening or enlightenment in all beings. So the mind is empty. In essence, the nature of mind would be clarity and luminosity, and we talk about those quite a bit. And awareness is vast. So really the teachings, and I've talked a little bit more than I wanted to, I apologize for that. From a philosophical point, they're rooted in the emptiness of the second turning of the wheel, but the luminous awareness, the Buddha nature aspects are the experiences we get through the third turning of the wheel. And what's really important, I think, and what sets this apart, and what we'll again talk about a little bit more later, is that having the nature of our minds directly pointed out by a teacher is really a precious gift in this path of liberation. So, yeah, I think that might be enough for now, unless we want to. Do we want to touch on the three yanas, or do you think the three turnings was enough?
No, I think that was good. I think that was
okay.
Yeah. I was thinking it might be helpful to talk more about the main dish and the side dish that you touched on, because I think people will really relate to that. From a practice perspective, I think what I find so helpful that Mingyur Rinpoche has done so beautifully is really put together practices that really flow so seamlessly, such a beautiful step-by-step path that when we first begin, I'm sure there's many people here joining us that who are on the joy of living, who are taking the joy of living. And when we first do that, it's not until we kind of go through the joy of living and maybe through the path of liberation as well that we realize what an incredible foundation that joy of living is for the path of liberation. But that main dish essentially being the practice instructions, like step by step, how to work with our experience, how to work with the mind, how to really, get that monkey mind, that agitated, slightly chaotic mind to kind of start to settle down. And yeah, I mean, we could talk about how that kind of relates to the three yanas, sort of the foundational yana, getting the mind to kind of be pliable and workable, and on a more sort of gross level, sort of, seeing how we can work with our experience in a more skillful way. So much training, getting the skills to really work with our inner experience in a more, get our minds more in order. And then gradually opening up and starting to see the qualities that are there within the mind, the qualities of love, the qualities of compassion. And then deepening that into the Mahayana, the bodhicitta, and then deepening that into the nature of mind, where we're really looking towards the mind's essence And just seeing how that beautifully segues from the joy of living into the path of liberation, how it really is a seamless golden thread. Yeah, very beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've often said, and I'm sure you have too, Mingyur Rinpoche took these beautiful, amazing Mahamudra teachings and distilled them down to their essence. And this is what we have in the joy of living. So it really is this opportunity. It's not the same, it's not the same depth, but yeah, it's incredible how easily they line up with the three turnings of the wheel, the three yanas. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all kind of familiar by the time we get to the path of liberation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love Rinpoche's quote that the entire path is a change in perception. That's it. Sometimes I think I've heard him say the entire path is a change in perspective as well. So, either way, I think it works quite well.
Yeah. Yeah. Very simple shift.
Good. So you talked a little bit about joy of living, what we just talked about, how they line up so well and how it's so easy for people to, move from, well, it's one dish, right? It's the path that Mingyur Rinpoche has lined up for us. But some people, haven't necessarily gone through the joy of living, but already have some experience with meditation. So what do you feel is missing or what is unclear that might lead someone to look for a path like the path of liberation?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a great question. I think for myself, certainly when I came to meditation, it was definitely an experience where I tried a lot of different things. I'd really explored, traveled around the world, done a lot of different things. Some of them brought a lot of happiness, some of them brought a lot of suffering. But I could very easily see that what really needed to shift, to really bring the lasting happiness, to find the peace that I was looking for, I needed to go within. And I knew that even before I began meditation. I mean, I know, George, you were very fortunate as a teenager to meet that route. It wasn't until later on in life for me that was so clear, but I was always looking inwards for something. And so I suppose I came to meditation definitely with an intention to be able to manage my emotions a little bit better. Not to say that I was a particularly volatile person, but maybe to make peace with the inner conflicts that I was having. And yeah, I was looking for certain things within myself that I thought meditation could bring. But I had a very limited idea of what that was. My understanding of what happiness was, even though it was quite big to think of it in a piece, it was still around me and my experience, wanting myself to be more at ease. And through the practice, through the joy of living, although joy of living, I didn't meet joy of living immediately. I met a form of it. I received teachings from Mingyur Rinpoche very early on, as soon as I started practicing. And when I looked through my notes, actually, they were essentially joy of living, but joy of living didn't exist at that time. But yeah, interestingly enough, it was very much coming with my own suffering that I was looking to work through. And when I started to get a sense of the potential of these practices, and when I started to really see how deeply interconnected we are, and the wisdom of the beings that I met through the path, and the incredible friends that I met through the path who were seeking as well, gosh, a whole different world opened up for me. And it wasn't just about sitting on the cushion and learning to be with the emotions a little bit better. It was a whole different way of viewing myself, viewing others, viewing the world. And there's no way that I could have had this understanding of the potential of what the mind could be, or what our experience could be, without teachings like the path of liberation. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but through the Buddhist path, through encountering the Buddhist teachings, my understanding of what's possible just opened up. The ceiling came off. I mean, it literally came off. And yeah, I feel like there's enough to keep me going for lifetimes, for sure, for lifetimes. And to really have trust in that path. Not to say it's easy, not at all, not saying it's not easy, and not to say that the suffering, that it was a quick fix. The path turned out to not be what I thought it would be, but the potential of what the path could bring was also very much not what I thought it would be, and that was really what's been so beautiful. What about you? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say that I stayed with meditation. I mean, it wasn't my sole place of looking for happiness. I certainly did quite a bit of exploring. But the traditions that I was in when I met Mingyur Rinpoche, it was more the philosophy that really I had trouble with. What I didn't recognize was that it was the prescription of my meditation experience that I really found uncomfortable. And when I met Mingyur Rinpoche, and many of us know about the 3 personality types that Rinpoche talks about, the body, the speech, and the mind personalities. And, Rinpoche's teachings on, just because my meditation experience, and you and I have had conversations like this many times, and we've done programs like this before where I'll answer a question to the best of my ability, and then you'll have an equally valid, not opposing view, but different take on it, and vice versa. Just because we're different people with different experiences, and you're an artist, I might embarrass a 5-year-old if I claimed that it was their, if I said, oh, it's not mine, it's their art. So really that permission to have my own experience. And and really what I personally found incredibly helpful, because I did, as you said, I started meditating quite early, but it was not under anyone's guidance. I was going from teacher to teacher to tradition and workshop to workshop. But here, we have the foundation of the shamatha, the foundation of the calm abiding practice that we're introduced to right in Joy of Living level 1. And, you and I have been taking another program. It took, I think, for 5 years, 6 years. That was nothing. That was all we practiced was shamatha practice. Before we got into anything else. And then, slowly building on that, becoming familiar with awareness, becoming familiar with our minds, and then moving into, a little more analysis, vipassana. And then, from there, just really being ripe and ready to touch into the skillful means that this rich tradition has to offer. I didn't have a clear, direct path like that before. And I found this, I mean, it just made it so much easier for me. And, that was when I met Rinpoche, it took, I don't know, 4 hours. And I knew this was it. The teachings were all so accessible, so effective. And I wanted to share these as quickly as I could with the students I was teaching at the time. I certainly didn't think I could teach it. Yeah. But if I did want to join the path of liberation, how would I join the path of liberation? I mean, this whole Vajrayana Buddhism, I know, Helen Tworkov, who's co-written a couple of Rinpoche's books, in her autobiography, she said that when she encountered Tibetan Buddhism, it was like Catholicism on LSD. There's a lot of crazy pictures, a lot of iconography that's quite foreign to most of us. So
Yeah.
how did you make that work? How does this fit?
Yeah, great question. Great question. There's a lot to it. Maybe we could just pull up one slide here just to explain. I'm very much a visual learner, and so I think if I can pull up one slide just to explain what makes up the path of liberation. Yeah, that's the one. Great. So those of you who are visual learners, you'll probably appreciate this. Within the Path of Liberation training, we have these two things. One is called method and one is called wisdom. And we'll go into this, you know, George and I are going to kind of unpack this in not too much detail, but just really explore what these two things are really. But what George was talking about, the kind of the LSD part, I believe, was that what you used it on acid, right? That would be the
I think that's what Helen said. Yeah.
That's what Helen said. That would be the method aspect. So the wisdom piece, George will speak to in a few moments, the nature of mind. And so those of you who've sort of explored joy of living, nature of mind is very much a teaching where we're still learning to recognize the mind, work with the mind's essence. These are the wisdom teachings where we're really just meditating with the mind directly. But the method piece is really quite interesting. The method piece, and so within Tergar, we have what we call tracks. There's two ways of approaching the method, and one is the Nectar of the Path method, and the other is the Nundra method. Maybe that's enough for now. Maybe we could just take the slide down for now. But just to say a little bit about the method. So what's going on in the method? You know, I mentioned earlier, like my view of what our potential was, who we are, what our worldview is really is quite limited. And so what's happening in the method teachings is we're really coming up against ideas and ways of working with the mind that are consciously and subconsciously kind of challenging the way that we see ourselves and the way that we see each other. And it's very, very powerful. And we call this kind of skillful means. Another word for the method is skillful means. And what we're doing in the method is we're doing two things. We're purifying. So what are we purifying? We're purifying our incorrect ways of perceiving ourselves and others. We're purifying what we call in Buddhism, to use Buddhism jargon, we're purifying our obscurations. We're purifying the things that we've said, so it's our speech, things that we thought, our mind, things that we've done with our body. And so we have practices that are very, very powerful at purifying. And at the same time, we're doing another thing, which is called accumulating merit. And accumulating merit is basically creating a propensity in the mind that is going to, in some way, sort of help us along the path. So it's like if we train in something every single day, we're accumulating merit in that particular thing. You know, if we play an instrument every day, all of us, not overnight, but over time, with regular practice, we become very, very skilled. It's very natural. We can pick something up and just very quickly we've got it. And so with these practices of the method, we are learning to train the mind to respond in a certain way to situations, to purify the way that we see ourselves and that we see others. And so if you were to follow the path of liberation, you would be basically training, and this is a good word that we use again and again, training in both the wisdom and the method. And these two work together. These two really work together. So we've got the meditation practice, which is just pure meditation, looking at the mind, which, as I said, George will go into shortly, working directly with our experience of the mind. And then the method, of course, the method is still meditation. It's not like we're going for a jog or we're learning how to cook or doing something like that. We're still meditating, but it's a very different style of meditating. We're chanting. We could be doing things like visualization. We do things like going for refuge. So we bring to mind. The Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, so beings who are really uplifting the mind and bringing to mind something that's really going to fundamentally shift our understanding of what is possible. You know, we really, as I said, reorienting our worldview of who we are and what is possible. Would you like to add to that description, George, of skillful means or method?
Well, I think you're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail with the specifics to begin with. But I think for me, it was helpful because that whole idea of purifying sounds a little bit moralistic, you know,
Yeah,
and it's not intended that way, you
yeah.
know. Just like when we work with negative emotions, it's not that there's something wrong with the emotions, but we are working toward well, you use the word obscurations. You know, we're working toward retraining ourselves to move more toward our goal, our intention of recognizing the nature of our mind, which is why we're settling into these practices. Um, I like to use, and I don't know the Greek or the Hebrew, but my understanding is that the word sin, which now has quite severe moral overtones, was originally in Greek and Hebrew just meant that which takes us away from our goal.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, moving against my intention. So if I want to be honest and I steal stuff, that would be moving away from my goal. So how do I break that habit? I create a different habit. So, you know, as we go through the different steps in the different levels of the path of liberation, I begin to, you know, maybe break down a little bit that sense of entitlement I have, that inflated ego that I have, maybe some of my miserliness, maybe you know, just changing my view quite a bit, and it's incredibly powerful the way that this works, and it, you know, it's something that I think in theory, if I didn't just dive in, I probably would have thought 2 or 3 times about it. But you know, I had looked long enough that I decided this is it, and I'm going to trust the teacher, and this is what the teacher says. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been quite effective in my life.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love the way you gave some concrete examples, because I can recognize that what I was saying was quite abstract there. But yeah, I loved what you said, like maybe you're quite miserly. And then so to give folks an example, the generosity would be that you're using a mudra and visualizing something in front of you, and then you're imagining that you're offering. So that's that great example of going against the flow of normally holding on to everything that, you know, what about me, trying to accumulate. And here we're doing the exact opposite and just giving away. So it's a very, very powerful, very, very beautiful practice. And I loved what you said there, George, that if you'd sat down and thought about it, or if you'd read a book probably about what you were really getting into, you'd have been like, whoa, no, that's not for me. But yeah, we often don't know what's really good for us. I mean, if that's kind of what's got us into the mess that we're in right now. We've tried all sorts of things that we thought would bring us the happiness, and lo and behold, who'd have thought that visualizing and offering something would actually have such a profound effect. I mean, when we meet somebody who's generous in spirit and generous in every other sense, what a beautiful quality to be around. Yeah. I'm wondering,
And I think it's a,
sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wonder if as we've gone so far, we could continue with the method, and then you go into the wisdom if you'd like, if that would be
Sure. Yeah.
less choppy. Should
Yeah.
we bring up the method slides, then we could unpack them together. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So in the Nectar of the Path, this is a simple track of the path of liberation. So there are 5 levels to the path of liberation. Oh, maybe we need to explain the 5 levels first. Well, just in a nutshell, there are 5 levels to the path of liberation, which George will go through shortly, what those 5 are in the way that they correspond to the wisdom. And then when we look at them through the method side, so in this next slide, we also have different levels that correspond to these 5 levels. And so Nectar of the Path is a fast track for people who are very, very busy, for people who have, a family, work, maybe they can only do 30 minutes of practice a day, something like that. And so these levels that you go through, one stage at a time, as you receive these teachings, one step at a time, take you through these different aspects. We won't go into detail about them now, but just those of you who are interested, as you can see, we cover things like the 4 thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma, taking refuge, what that really means to turn your mind towards something that is virtuous, towards something that is really going to uplift the mind in that way. Bodhicitta, then opening and expanding the heart in a way that really you move beyond thinking about yourself, but to thinking about all beings, and not only about thinking about all beings, but thinking about all beings really recognizing their full potential. And then this piece on Guru Yoga, so this piece of really recognizing that our essence, the essence of the teacher who points out that essence, is inseparable. And then the next slide, and hopefully this isn't too much information, in the Nundro track, which is the slightly more, well, it's actually not slightly, it's a lot more rigorous. It takes far more time to go through this track, but it has, it's a lot deeper. It's a lot deeper. It's the traditional way of entering the Vajrayana path. And so again, we have the 4 thoughts and refuge. And so these are the traditional practices. So Vajrasattva, we're purifying our speech, essentially. The mandala, the practice of generosity, which we just sort of unpacked slightly there, this mind of letting go. And then again, the Guru Yoga, so really the purification of the mind and accumulating the merit in that way. So I think that's probably enough information here for that. And yeah, I'll hand it back over to you, George, if you'd like to speak about the wisdom.
Yeah, I know you had a quote. Did you want to use that one now?
Oh, yeah,
You're
maybe
really
that
good at
would be good.
quotes.
That would be
Yeah.
really lovely. Which slide was it? The next one. Yeah. So this is a beautiful, beautiful quote by Tergar Rinpoche. He says, "Do not think that the preliminary practices are kind of lowly or for beginners, or that they're not as profound as the main part of Dzogchen and Mahamudra. In fact, the preliminary practices come at the beginning precisely because they are of crucial importance and are the basis for all other practices." And the reason why I wanted to share this slide, if we think of the preliminary practices here are really referring to the Nundro and the nectar of the path. And so it's really talking about the method. We can often think of these sort of method practices of things that we've just got to do to kind of get out of the way to get to the good stuff. And the good stuff being the main dish, the nature of mind practices, these wisdom practices. But really, without the accumulation of merit, without the purification, without this shift in mindset, without a heart that is open, and without really being able to have this strong, solid foundation that comes through the method practices, we really won't be able to practice these wisdom teachings. So yeah, maybe that's enough, and I'll hand it over, George. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I see we're getting close to the time we hope to wrap this up. So I'll try to keep the wisdom portion short, practice some of my own wisdom, but sometimes I I'm not so successful at that. So there are Rinpoche's path of liberation, again, has a flavor of Dzogchen. The way Rinpoche delivers it has a bit of Dzogchen, but it's traditionally Mahamudra. And through this, Rinpoche has the 4-point pointing out instructions that he offers us. So I think on slide 4, if we could share that one, that actually has them listed out, and I'll just maybe use the labels just so people see that. Kunsang and I had this conversation when we were looking at this. It's like, because I'm not a big slide person, I'm not a visual learner so much, but I know this is really helpful for some folks. So the first pointing out instruction, this year it's translated as all phenomena appear in the mind. Sometimes it's translated as all phenomena come from mind. Sometimes it's translated as all appearance are mind. So various different translations, all kind of the same idea. It's all in your head, right? So this is what we really start to look at with the first pointing out instruction. And then mind is emptiness. And I mentioned a little bit about that when we were talking about the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. So we have specific, this is the pointing out instruction that needs to be given in person. So this is really, really essential. I mean, they're all essential, but this is the one that's really quite key. And then first we recognize that the mind, everything comes from our mind. And then as we look at our mind, we recognize that in essence, it's empty. And then as we look even further, we see that emptiness itself is spontaneous presence. So this is the manifestation, the fact that anything can appear. Emptiness is not a lack of something, without getting too far into things, but it's a potential. A blank sheet of paper can become anything. It could become a drawing, it could become this slide, it could become a paper airplane, it could become origami. It's from emptiness, we can create anything at all. And then spontaneous presence is self-liberated. We begin to look at the union of emptiness and manifestation. So some of you might remember from the Joy of Living, Rinpoche uses that example of a flame. The flame gives off light, is maybe orange and red and yellow, so it's got colors. It also has it also has heat. So different aspects of the same thing. So this idea that the nature of our mind has different aspects. It's not different. It's just, as we look at it, we can see that it's got different manifestations, and anything can manifest. And again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's not something we can hold on to anyway, because it's empty in essence. And even emptiness itself, we can't hold on to. And then as Kunsang just mentioned a moment ago, level 5 is a white Tara sadhana, a white Tara liturgy that Mingyur Rinpoche composed, which is actually much more concise than the first white Tara liturgy that we used to use. And this is really moving, so we've moved, thank you for the slide, Stella, or Juliet. So it's moving from completing the Nundro, or completing Nectar of the Path, and moving into, from, as Kunsang said, in Guru Yoga, we recognize that our nature is the same as our teacher, the same as our Guru, which is the same as a Buddha. And then we begin to look at and really recognize that we are exactly the same as all the Buddhas. Our essence is no different. And, so again, this is step by step by step, which is really an amazing and accessible path that Rinpoche has laid out. And, much of it comes, directly from the tradition. But the way that Mingyur Rinpoche has laid it out for us is really quite unique, I think. So I think, and I have a quote too. So I think it's the next slide. So when we recognize the nature of our minds, I think it's slide 6, maybe. It's much shorter. This is from Rinpoche's father. When we recognize the nature of our mind, it's so easy we don't trust it. It's so close we don't see it. It's almost like we've been looking through a window our entire lives. We just never recognized the glass was there. Not a great metaphor, but Rinpoche always uses that example of the watch. Until somebody points it out to you, it's like, oh, it's always been there. I just didn't recognize it. I didn't realize. So I think that's all I have to say about the wisdom portion. And yeah, I think we can open up for questions unless you'd like to add anything, please.
No, it's wonderful. Thank you, George. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got loads of questions coming in. And so I'm going to start at the beginning. There was quite a few people who've come through the Joy of Living path. So I thought I would share some of their questions with you first. So I'm in the Joy of Living 1 right now, level 1. Therefore, it will take a while until I can start the path of liberation due to the requirements. Is there something I can start learning about it now? What would you recommend to maintain one's motivation for the path of liberation?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. It's always, we're looking for happiness, right? We're trying to, this is the magic stuff. This is the preliminary practices. But as we mentioned earlier, Rinpoche has distilled these practices down to joy of living. So personally, I think one would really, really benefit from taking joy of living at least twice, quite frankly, and really getting familiar with those practices, really getting familiar with awareness, and then moving to levels 2 and 3 and beginning to recognize some of the qualities of awareness. As Kunsong mentioned earlier, not to repeat it. And that really sets us up for success, sets us up so that the path of liberation is relatively familiar by the time we arrive there. The practices are quite different, but the concepts are, quite similar, I think. They're just expanded a bit. But as far as motivation, I really love, Tim, who can't be here today, always suggests reading, stories of the great masters. We're in this age, and maybe we've always been in this age where, I want it now. I really want it now. Whether you're 18, 8 or 88 and, don't have, feel like you might not have time to complete the joy of living and the path of liberation. But reading the stories of the great masters, I think, can be incredibly motivational when it comes to that. Kunsong, any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think keeping the motivation going, as we said earlier, the joy of living, you said there are eight steps. Is that the right word? 8 steps.
I think so. Yeah.
8 steps. So it's beautiful. You're on the path, and the joy of living is so rich. So it's easy to think that the grass is slightly greener on the other side, like the good stuff's over there. The candies on the top shelf are going to be the most delicious treats. But really, I think, yeah, as we said earlier, by the time you go through joy of living and eventually, hopefully, get to complete the path of liberation, Rinpoche actually encourages us then to go back and redo the joy of living. And as we redo the joy of living, we really start to appreciate how rich those teachings are, really how rich they are. So I would just say, yeah, savor them, enjoy them, don't rush through them. They will stay motivating as long as you're really engaging with the practice, because they're just revealing so much in your experience. Yeah. I think what do you find in general, George, that keeps you motivated to practice? Because I do hear from a lot of people, like they're doing the joy of living, and for some reason they've kind of lost interest. They stop at a certain point. They're doing the joy of living e-learning online course, and there's me raving about how rich and beautiful it is, but I understand some people, they life gets in the way or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I'm here in Kathmandu in the middle of a Joy of Living 1 weekend workshop. Last weekend, I did another Joy of Living 1 weekend workshop someplace else, and I did a 1 and a 2 the 2 weekends before that. If you can find a live program, I think that can really also help with motivation, because this strength of community, the strength of Sangha, if we're using Buddhist terms, the strength of Sangha and the support of Sangha can really be motivational. Oh, you do have a visitor, Gonzalo. And so if you can't find an in-person one, which I know are a little bit rare these days, we do have online cohorts that people can join. So you can join for level 1 only takes 6 weeks to go through. Level 2 takes 8 weeks, and it's just 2 hours a week to go through it. And then of course you still need to do your own personal practice. But just like this program, where we have some interaction, we have questions, we practice a little bit together. And with that, it's much more so. It's not 3,000 people. It's 20 of you, maybe 30 of you, and you're practicing together on a weekly basis, having small group discussions. And I think that really does help to keep it incredibly alive for me. I really rely on touching base with people.
Yeah. We just had a practice session here at the Quinta here in Portugal, and it was just 3 of us, but it was such a rich hour and a half. It was so rich, and I agree. It's just the physical meeting together. So yeah, encouraging people to do that if they can. Thank you. Jenny, you said the postman would come, didn't you? We just had
In fact, say we knew the postman would come while we were here, and now we all want to know what's in the box. But also people want to know what the prerequisites are. So somebody is on so could you please advise if I can attend a Path of Liberation level 1 and 2 in-person retreat that's planned this summer if I have only learned Joy of Living level 1? So I guess how can people join?
Yeah, this is a really important one, because if you're not ready for the Path of Liberation teachings, you'll miss them. It'll kind of go over your head. It's like being, I mean, I don't drink wine now because I'm a nun, but it would be like going to a really, really fancy wine tasting venue and tasting all these incredible wines and just not understanding and just missing what is very, very beautiful and very profound. So it's very, maybe that was a ridiculous example, but it's very important to be prepared for the Path of Liberation. Very important. And Rinpoche does stress this at the Path of Liberation teachings, that even people who've come all the way physically to receive the teachings, he will say, if you did not receive, if you're not prepared, if you've not got the prerequisites, you can get your money back, and bye-bye. If you're joining online, Path of Liberation 1, and you've not meeting the prerequisites, you can get your money back, and please, don't join, because it's almost like you're getting the end of the movie before you're ready, right? You're getting a taste of what's coming before you're ready for it, and it will spoil the whole show. So what exactly are the prerequisites? So if you've only taken Joy of Living 1, but you've been practicing for 20 years or a long time, say 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, as a regular practice, so not just dipping in and out, not just going to the odd teaching here and there, but actually sitting and having a stable, consistent meditation practice, including some retreat practice. So I think it's 30 days of retreat practice with 6 hours a day. If you meet that requirement, then absolutely you can go to a Path of Liberation 1 retreat. We would love to have you. If you are new to meditation and you've only done Joy of Living 1, then enjoy the rest of Joy of Living and know that there's something else for you. If you're interested, by the time you've completed Joy of Living 1 to 3, along with the prerequisites of those 3 levels. Yeah.
I think there's one other option. In addition to a daily meditation practice for 5 years, as you said, and the 30 days of retreat under the guidance of a Buddhist teacher. Also, if you have completed the full Nundro in a different tradition. you can come and join the Path of Liberation. But again, it would still be recommended that if you've been doing that, you would certainly benefit from joining Joy of Living level 1, 2, 3, but you could come to the Path of Liberation. And yeah, and it's not, I don't think it's just that you could spoil the story, spoil the end of the story, because that sounds like, oh, well, that I could probably handle that. It's, it could actually be an obstacle to your practice. You could misunderstand the pointing out instructions. You could misunderstand the teachings because of some preconception that hadn't been addressed in previous practices. So yeah, I think, enjoy, soak it up. It's not like you're not at the big kids table. It's, that the Joy of Living one, which I'm doing this weekend again, it's incredibly profound. And some of the same practices are in Path of Liberation 1 and Joy of Living 1. So yeah.
The two questions that feel like they might go together, and right at the end, we'll be telling you the dates of the online Path of Liberation and then the in-person dates that are all around the world for Path of Liberation 1 and 2. But somebody wants to ask, is there an online version of the second stage of the Path of Liberation? And then somebody else has asked, what is the direct pointing out of the teacher? So I thought maybe you could say something about both of those together.
Yeah, good questions. So at this point, well, up until 2020, all 5 levels had to be in person because we weren't in this world where Zoom and YouTube and these virtual teachings were so common and easily accessible. But Rinpoche has said that at this point, at least Path of Liberation level 2 has to be taken in person. So there is no online version at the moment. And we do recognize that that can be a big obstacle for people. Less so than it was 70 years ago when you had to go over walk over the mountains into Tibet to find a teacher to give you pointing out instructions. But it certainly can be an obstacle if you can't travel for whatever reason. I did hear, and I don't know where it sits, but I believe last year there was some conversation about maybe coming up with a way to work around it. I know they are experimenting with a hybrid version, but it's still in person. Both locations are going to be in person this year, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. So there is the answer is no. There is no online version of the second pointing out. And the direct pointing out of the teacher is Mingyur Rinpoche, just like if anybody, has had Rinpoche use the watch example, as I mentioned earlier, or in his book, he gives the story of the people who, are poor and begging, and their friend says, oh, but you've got a bunch of jewels, buried in your, sitting in the corner or buried under your floor. And, they're just as rich today as they were yesterday. They just didn't realize it. They didn't recognize it. So Rinpoche is pointing out, or the teacher is pointing out the nature of your mind, which again is so clear, we don't trust it, and so close. I don't remember exactly what the quote was now. That's embarrassing. But we don't believe it. It's because it's something that's always been there. We just hadn't noticed. And this is what the teacher points out. Kun-san, can you be more clear on that than I was?
No, I think that was wonderful. I think that's beautiful. Yeah. And it's very special. I mean, it's not something that we just get once. It's something that if we have the good fortune, we receive these teachings, this pointing out instruction again and again and again. And each time we sit in the room with a realized being who is resting in the nature of mind, it's something that, it's a transmission. We often use the word transmission. And it's very, very precious. It's like we're getting a taste of something that can't be described in words. It's a non-conceptual. It's like talking about the taste of chocolate and eating chocolate. It's two very, very different things. And so to have the opportunity to be with someone and to receive these actual instructions and meditate with Rinpoche, I highly recommend. Yeah. Mhm.
We've had a lot of really lovely questions that are about practice questions, which I don't think we've got time to answer today. But somebody has asked if please tell us about the path of liberation in some detail. Are there numbers of hours per practice required for the steps ahead? What are the steps? You said a bit there. And is there support and is there guided practice?
Yeah, great question. What I would suggest for anybody who really wants to know more about the Nundro, it would be to read Mingyur Rinpoche's book, Turning Confusion into Clarity. It's a really beautiful book that explains what the practices, what the method practices are, and also explains the context of the pointing out instructions, the three kinds of awareness. Yes, there are practice requirements at each level. So there are hours per practice. And so to do the Nundro, really you're looking at having, I would say, around 2 hours a day to be able to practice the Nundro realistically. It wouldn't matter. You wouldn't have to do that every single day. But if you're only going to practice it once a week on a Saturday, then you're never going to get through it. It's something that somebody who has a pretty regular practice time of about 2 hours would take on the Nundro. Like everything that we do in Tergar, we have so much material. Everything is so beautifully laid out. We have course guides. We even have courses on Vajrayana online that support the teachings. So you receive the teachings at a live event. And then Mingyur Rinpoche is encouraging everybody who comes to those live teachings or receives those live teachings online to then go on to Vajrayana Online, where we have all of the resources to support you and to keep you motivated, to keep you engaged. These aren't sort of teachings that you can just take in, even in a weekend, even in a retreat over a weekend. You can't just sort of take them in and go off. There's something that you need to kind of allow to seep in. These teachings really need to come into your being. They take time. So to go through the full path of liberation, you're looking at a number of years. Let's just say that, a good number of years, depending on the amount of hours that you do per day. But yes, if you have more questions about that, then we can, I would say, write to Tergar support, tergar@study.org. Is that right, Jenny? What's the email?
Event support is the best one for all the questions about events and practice, and then they'll pass you on to the right team.
Thank you.
We've got just a practical question. So this is being translated, this session now, and somebody's written their question in Spanish. So the Path of Liberation, is it a program available in Spanish and other languages? Does it have a translation?
Sí and no. So yes and no. Since the program is live, we always will have a translator, as we do now when Rinpoche gives his teachings. And the practice guides that Kunsong mentioned also have translations into all the languages. I believe that we are offering translation here, with the possible exception of Japanese. I'm not sure about that one. What we do not have, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the Vajrayana online courses are not translated into any languages other than English at the moment. So you'll have to do it the old school way, using the guidebooks and practicing that way, which is really quite accessible, but it's a little more solitary. Anything to add to that one, my friend?
No, I think that's right. And we can
And I think they're working hard behind the scenes to make everything as accessible as possible. So, yeah. I'll just mark this one for the translators. There's just somebody who's asking, as a first step, can the teachings of the path of liberation help heal or provide relief to anxiety, fear, and panic symptoms?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that the way that it helps and the way that it heals is that it changes our relationship to experiences like anxiety, fear, and panic. So there's definitely no take a pill and it's gone. You know, that's not what meditation, the intention of meditation. And if we were to sell it that way, then we would be making a false claim, and you should get your money back. But what meditation does do is we learn to see that all of our experience is coming from or arising within, is known by awareness. And through those practices in the joy of living, I would really encourage you to explore, first of all, the joy of living, where we start to shift our way of relating to experiences that are challenging, by recognizing the love and the compassion that is there within the experience. And then by the time we get to the path of liberation, then we've already got this foundation where we're no longer flying out of the room. You know, we're able to stay with the energy of these experiences. And so here now in the path of liberation, we're looking to the mind itself as we're experiencing fear, or as we're experiencing panic. And again, we're seeing, you know, where is this mind that is knowing panic? So we can't find the mind, and yet there is this expression, there is this display. And so it's a more subtle practice that we've already been introduced to in the joy of living, but it's a slightly more a slightly more subtle way of working with the practice. And just to add to that, you know, once we've gone through the path of liberation, it might be that at times where we're experiencing strong anxiety or panic, that path of liberation wouldn't be your go-to practice. Maybe it would be joy of living too. Maybe it would be Tonglen, you know, but the idea is that once we've had the full range of practices, we have more resources to turn to. We've got more ways of working skillfully with what is arising, and fundamentally our way of relating to those experiences is no longer seeing that there's something that's a flaw, that there's something that we've got to get rid of. Fundamentally, that shift is that we're seeing that really in our nature we are okay. These experiences that we're having are really just a display of the mind. It's just energy. So they are profound in that way. But as I said at the beginning, they don't get rid of those experiences.
Thank you both. So that's flown by, but that's the end of our time for Q&A. We've had some lovely questions, so just to plug the Path of Liberation programs that you'll have if you kind of join, you'll just have lots of opportunities to ask Kunzang and George and the other Tergar guide questions and discuss it together in community. So before we wrap up, have the two of you got some final words you'd like to share?
I'm not sure I have anything profound to say, but no, I think if you qualify and you have any interest at all, it's you know, I would certainly make the effort to attend at least the online Joy of Living or Path of Liberation one if you are able. You know, I saw that we did have a question about Samaya. So you're not really making a commitment to Mingyur Rinpoche if you show up. You know, you're making a commitment to yourself, and if you decide it's not for you, that's okay. But you know, you could make an educated choice that way. And the thing is, you just wouldn't be able to move on through the path if you didn't complete the practices. So that's the only samaya that you're making. And yeah, it has certainly changed my life. I won't even say one aspect of my life. So I thoroughly encourage you to join. It's incredibly profound, incredibly accessible, and Mingyur Rinpoche's generosity never fails to amaze me. Konsang, my friend?
Yeah, thank you, George. Thank you. I suppose I would just add to that to be able to receive these teachings from Mingyur Rinpoche, somebody who's really, really deeply embodying and able to transmit these teachings is so rare and so precious. That we are really very, very blessed to be able to take these teachings. And I echo what George has shared. I'd really encourage you, as and when you qualify to take the path of liberation level 1. It's an extraordinary opportunity that's been deeply, deeply transformative in my own practice. Thank you.
Thank you both. So before we wrap up, we're going to let you know where you can find these Path of Liberation 1 and 2. So Stella, if you want to share the first slide. So if you do meet the prerequisites and feel ready to take the next step, we warmly invite you to join Mingyur Rinpoche. So for the first Path of Liberation Level 1 retreat, so this is going to be July 24th to 26th. So this year, this is the only time Rinpoche will be offering Level 1 online on its own. So during this retreat, you'll receive the first of the 4 pointing out instructions of the Path of Liberation, along with the guidance on how to practice it. And this will be within the framework of the Nectar of the Path, which is a beautiful liturgy for daily practice that Rinpoche himself composed. And if you are a Path of Liberation student already, it's always just a lovely opportunity to reconnect with the teachings and the practice. So each year, Rinpoche just brings new insights, guided meditations, just a new way of looking at the teachings, and it really deepens it. So the registration is open, and you can register now at events.tergar.org, which I think should be in the chat now. And the direct link is here, also in the Zoom resources, which should be at the bottom of your tab. And we're also posting it for you on YouTube. So next slide, please. So in person, this year, Rinpoche will be leading levels 1 and 2 retreats in France, the United States, Australia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, and Malaysia. So as the pointing out instructions for level 2 is given in person, then this is where you can attend to receive that pointing out instruction. So, and again, if you're new to them or you've been to them before, it's always just lovely to deepen your nature of mind practice. So as part of these retreats, Rinpoche will offer a refuge ceremony. So if you would formally like to take refuge, then you can do that too. There's going to be teachings on traditional Nundro practices if you decide to take that path, as well as on the Nectar of the Path. And this year, as a special highlight, participants will also receive a rare teaching on one of Milarepa's songs of realization. And then finally, in this in-person retreat, Rinpoche will also give the White Tara empowerment. So this is a ceremony that introduces you to the enlightened quality embodied by the White Tara, including awareness, loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom, so that you can begin to see these qualities in yourself. And this empowerment connects participants to Tara's blessings and serves as a seed for future practice within the path of liberation. So just to note, if you do want to attend level 1 and level 2 this year, you will fulfill the prerequisites to join the retreats, and you'll find that on the webpage. Oh no, and you'll receive the prerequisites for the special set of Dzogchen teachings that Rinpoche is going to be teaching all year through the annual transmission. So this is 2026 to 2027, and these are very special teachings that can run alongside the Path of Liberation practices. Next slide, please. Oh, I missed a bit out there. So the registration is almost open for all these Dzogchen retreats, and we're prepared a special page for those attending this retreat. So you can find that in the registration links in one place and if you can add them to the chat now. So the links in the Zoom. So these are for the Dzogchen and the Path of Liberation practices, all in one page. So Path of Liberation Level 2, 1 and 2, we're going to be live with Kempo Kunga in Brazil. And these are, Kempo Kunga is one of Rinpoche's senior students. And this is going to be a very special retreat. So it's going to be in person with Kempo Kunga, and Kunzin Palmo will be there. And Rinpoche will also be teaching Path of Liberation in Portland at the same time. So he will be live streamed from Portland, USA. So, and you can get links to that too. I think the registration for that opens soon. So the links should be in the chats. So the next one, the last one on the community team slide. So, like we said, within Tergar, community is a really important aspect of the support on the path. So you're getting the teachings from Rinpoche, teachings and support from the Tergar guides, but also there's space to connect with community, either in discussion groups or within practice communities. So. And we know that it can be really helpful to have the support of others who are on a similar journey. So if you feel you'd like to connect with others who could help your practice, talk with you, there are many meditation groups around the world, and some of these meet in person and online, and sometimes in hybrid forms. There's also groups that meet specifically around the Path of Liberation practices. And you can explore more about this by clicking on the link in the resources and in the chat box. And also, if you scan that QR code, you'll go to the community page. So the community team, there's your local in-person groups online, and there's small specialist groups as well. So Tergar also offers lots of support for people who want to start a new practice group. So if you're in your local area and you've got a few people interested in Tergar and you want to form your own local group, you can contact the community building team at Tergar, and you can see that's community team at tergar.org for more information, and we'll pop that email in the chat, along with the link to find a community centre or practice group. And they're a lovely team, and they will help you. They will guide you through the process of how you can set up a group. And if you need any other information, events support at tergar.org for anything else you need. So I would just like to thank Kunzang and George again for your wonderful introduction to the Path of Liberation. Thank you for opening this beautiful practice up to us, and thank you to everyone working behind the scenes, all my colleagues, and all of the interpreters providing translation to you all on Zoom. And thank you lastly to you all for your practice and for your participation in this. And we all look forward to this journey with you on the path. So until we meet again next time, thank you. The chat's open in Zoom and on YouTube as well. So please say goodbye and we'll see you again another time.